Welcome back to another episode of the Register's Kettle podcast. I'm your host, Brandon Vigliarolo, and you've likely heard about this week's topic if you've paid any attention to the internet in the past week. Google said at its annual I/O event that it's reinventing search for the AI era. But from an outsider perspective, it seems a lot more like Google's leaning into AI as an excuse to reshape the web in Gemini's image, regardless of how that might affect access to the open web. Unpredictably, there are a lot of people calling foul over that and other recent AI moves made by Google. With me to discuss this is LReg senior reporter Tom Claburn, and joining us for the first time on this iteration of the Kettle is our open source guru Liam Probyn. Thanks to both of you for being here.
Yeah, thanks. Thank you.
Yeah, of course. So, hey, Google's AIification of search was the big news to come out of I/O this week. Tom, you tuned into the keynote and wrote about this. So, what exactly did Google say it's going to do, and why is everyone so up in arms over this?
I mean, it's just more encroachment of AI into search, and they have their AI overviews, which are the little summaries that they put up on top of search results, and then they
Right.
also have a separate thing that's very similarly named but different called AI mode, which is available through a tab, and you click on it. And that's sort of a deeper version of AI. I think it ties into the Google Knowledge Graph, and it has sort of a broader thing, but you often get similar results. But basically,
Mhm.
they're going to be showing more of the AI overviews, and they, you know, they. It's not always clear when these happen, but basically, for longer queries, it's more likely to be handed off to an AI model.
Mhm.
And it's a problem for a lot of people because, people's relationship with Google began with, you go to Google, you find stuff, and then you leave. And increasingly, it's you go to Google and you're stuck there like it's a tar pit, and
Yeah.
just trying to figure out, like, where did they get this information? And, they'll put
Yeah.
up a summary, and, of course, they have the disclaimer, well, maybe it's not accurate. You'll have to check on that. How are you going to check on it? Oh, go to the links that we didn't show you. It's, people I think are a little bit, understand. I mean, part of it's just people don't like change, but part of it is just AI really is not the right answer for a lot of things, at least in my opinion. I mean, I think there are certain kinds of queries that it can be useful for, and I think that largely, though, if people are going to look for documents, they need to be able to find, reputable sites and be able to make
Right.
trust decisions. And a lot of that information is getting obscured or, put into little teeny citation chips that you have to click on to figure out where is this information coming from.
Yeah, and sometimes when you click on one site, it'll give you 4 or 5 links and be like, "Well, here's the sources we used to compile this information." Like, a lot of times I'll admit I do use the AI overviews every once in a while when they pop up, especially for simple questions like on my smartphone or something.
Right.
But, they'll give you cite their sources and you click on them, but sometimes that's just as big of a pain in the butt as assuming that the AI overview is just correct. I'd much rather just have a list of blue links, which Google did clarify I think to me and to Avram, our US editor earlier this week, that the traditional search engine result pages are not going away.
Yeah, they're not going away. They're just
Oh,
going to get buried under more
yeah,
AI.
right.
You have to work
Exactly.
harder to find them. And,
Yep.
and then there was some other interesting stuff too, where Gemini's, Spark, which is their agent that it's like an app in the Gemini, an agent in the Gemini app. They're also going to be making, pushing the sort of these long running AI tasks able to do, and they're going to eventually hook it up to, um, you know, sort of the regular Google account or search or whatever. So you can basically run a cron job with, an AI model essentially
Mhm.
go do things for you. And I think the thing they talk about it for is, shopping. It's going to, of course, plan your travel itinerary and do stuff for
Yeah.
you in the background. And somehow you're going to be happy with the results. It's not clear how you're going to pay for that because someone has to run this stuff. But, maybe this all comes out of the hide of advertisers who are going to sort of get shoveled into these results. Who knows?
Right, and that's actually kinda segues really well into one of the stories that I wrote about I/O this week, and that was Google's new AI advertisements that they're kind of injecting in. I see we're doing audio, but I see Liam on the other side of the camera just putting his hand in his hands,
Yeah,
oh
yeah,
my
yeah.
god. It's, we talk about where the cash is gonna come from this, and it's obviously gonna come from this, right? There were 2 particular kinds of AI advertisements that Google said they were gonna add soon to AI mode, right? There were some ads that were gonna be basically inline. If you ask a query, right, you get your responses back from the AI. In that list of results is gonna be ads. And Google said they're gonna be at the bottom of the list, but they're still going to be presented in line. And I think there might be some indicator about them being a sponsored element of the post, but they're still putting them in line with results that are ostensibly grabbed from the web and are supposed to be factual. The other one that I found a little more concerning personally was conversational discovery ads. So basically, the way Google described this is, you ask a complicated question and it will use Gemini to figure out what products you need to solve your problems. And the example they gave, right, was, oh, well, your house smells kind of musty and you want to make it smell more like a spa, right? Well, I feel like if I were to go onto Google right now and type in, my house smells musty and I don't want it to, right? Some of the first things you might get are things like, well, put some baking soda in some water, make a 50-50 mixture of vinegar and water, and you can deodorize and clean for pennies on the dollar. But Google sees this as a way to inject products in front of you.
Hmm.
And it's like that's gonna mean like I was picturing, going in there and asking for tips on cleaning my house and deodorizing it and getting a whole bunch of ads for $20 reed diffusers, expensive plug-in units. That's how I see this, right? And I don't know if that's entirely correct, but Google's not doing a lot to kind of say that that's not the case.
I feel that, I feel like the great prophet Cory Doctorow kind of, you know, nailed this a couple of years ago
Yeah,
now with this word enshittification. I was baffled when Google announced that it was going to start deliberately degrading search results in the interest of keeping people on the page and on the site
right.
longer. And it feels like they're not leaning in, they dived off the board and are jumping in, pinch the nose and throw yourself in. I do not see how this is going to pay long term, but on the one hand, maybe there's some genius there with playing four-dimensional chess. Maybe they've drunk the Kool-Aid and cannot imagine anything else now.
Yeah, it just feels like an attempt. I mean, it was the same thing with Google saying that they were introducing, I think, some commerce protocols
Hmm.
earlier this year that were designed to basically, allow Gemini to check out for you, right? So you don't even need to go to a company's website to buy a product now. You can do it all right through Gemini, right? So that again, right, that's starving a company of web
Yep.
views so that Google can make a few more cents on a transaction.
Yeah.
And I don't see how this is any different, right? It's injecting more ads, getting more things in front of you, and burying actual web results below this in the hopes that you
And
never get
and
to
the
that
one thing
point.
it's going to incentivize is that everyone who actually, wants to use an AI model is going to think, how can I use this to block ads?
Yeah.
And, uh,
Yeah.
you know, how can I use it to get this stuff out of my Google search results and get something that's closer to, to whatever, some kind of neutral or less commercial standard. At least if you put up with it, or if you don't just turn it off entirely and think, I'm going to I'm going to go back to Yahoo and get a list of curated sites and just stay there.
Yeah, I mean, at least, it's like you always have to I think about it sometimes in terms of, well, Google search was never giving me an objective view of what's on the internet, right? It's always filtered through Google's algorithm or whoever's. But I feel like there's a difference between filtering it through an algorithm and making me do the legwork and just assuming that whatever Gemini is serving to me is going to be exactly what I need because Google thinks it's what I need.
I mean, maybe you take what's the expression, a 30,000-foot view, but I think we got to go a lot higher and take a low Earth orbit view that this is going to be very good news for the wider software community as it drives improvements in ad blocking technology, Google free browsers, Google free search engines, Google free anything, please, anything that can get this stuff out of
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah,
and
it
already.
really
Europe is already partway there with the
Hmm?
sort of digital sovereignty stuff. I mean, this is just
Mhm.
another sort of data point in the rationale for moving, and perhaps we'll finally see some innovation where Google has kills its own search business. And it's not like search was doing so well anyway. I mean, it's been even before the AI boom, there was a lot of complaints that they were just lax about policing spam farms and things like that. There was a lot of lifting you had to do, even just as a 10 blue links user, to sort through the junk. And if they really cared about delivering quality editorial to people, the web would look a lot different. But they
We
Yeah, well,
may
you're right.
end.
You just wrote an op-ed, Tom, I think that kinda covers some of that, right? You asked Google's own AIs why Google search results were getting worse, and it pretty much was like, "Yeah, hey, they are, mea culpa here," it was,
right. Well, which I mean, it's unfair, but it's also kind of telling that this is what we've come to. We're going to source stuff off of a couple Reddit opinions and blogs. I mean,
Yeah.
And then, when you ask it, when you frame it in a nice way, you know, why is Google search great? It goes to Google's own blog posts to source that. I mean, I guess that works for some people, but it's really just a poisonous sort of media ecosystem. I mean, who wants to even be a part of that?
Yeah.
I mean, I think
Yeah.
all of this just drives a lot of sane people away, and the only people who are left are going to be sort of hucksters and grifters and people who are trying to game the system for whatever commercial intent they have.
Yeah.
It is,
The new, right.
yeah,
Yeah.
it's going to, I think one possible effect will be driving the creation, the fragmentation of the internet. Maybe not exactly layering, which is what I thought might be happening a decade or so ago, but in the same way that there are sites like Conservapedia and so on that try to present a US right wing moral majority type view of Wikipedia, that there will be a fragmentation into the AI driven web and the little indie, we're trying to keep this out AI free web. That there already was this attempt through Gemini, the other Gemini, the protocol. It was launched about a decade or so ago
Yeah.
now
Yeah. Really
as
quick,
a,
remind us what that is really quick.
it's an extremely lightweight protocol and markup language for serving pages of hyperlinked content that's not the web. And you needed to run a Gemini server and you needed to use a Gemini browser to access it. And it gave you kind of like a markdown view of the web. So you got bold, italic, and underline and nothing else, and you have no color, you have no fonts, you have no images, and really, really stripping back the online hypertext experience to like a early 90s view. It's kind of faltered in recent years, but it's people choosing this very minimalist and stripped back experience. And much as it seems, I think, to baffle marketing executives, I think a lot of people would choose an unaugmented AI free view of the web these days. And that
Yeah,
will,
especially with there's so much eyeball. I mean, just think about, good lord, the
Right.
the videos coming out of college graduations
mm,
recently,
mm,
right?
Well,
Everyone. I think Liam, you mentioned earlier, everyone except Waz has been
yeah,
booed to hell and back in the past couple of weeks for making AI claims. I think there's a lot of dissatisfaction with it, right? I
right.
think you're right.
well,
I think there'll be a lot of people.
the irony is that this should be the moment to shine for the social media networks that are,
Mhm.
notionally about people and connections, which haven't been with, Meta and Facebook. I mean, it's turning into the same AI slop engine as everything else and is,
Yeah.
driving people away.
It
There's
is.
theoretically a room for some kind of network that humans
Yeah,
can interact in because it's just not pleasant to be with bots. I mean, nobody wants
it's
to get AI communication. No one wants to deal with it. And
No.
you just cannot operate in the same space as a bot. They
right.
operate on, a velocity that people can't deal with. And it's just frustrating. So I don't know
I've
how
Mhm.
people are going to want to participate in this.
I've
Yeah.
gone through a little unexpected voyage in recent months because oddly enough, as a professional writer, and I also read a very great deal and have since childhood, I kept reading people saying, "Oh, this text is AI generated." I'm not going on any further because I read the first couple of lines and I just knew it's full of AI tells. And so I started asking people, what are the tells? What are the signs? Oh, it's just obvious. It's redolent. Okay, but can you give me a clue here? What are the things that give it away for you? And I have not yet been able to get anybody, when pressed, to give me a nice, clear list. A lot of it boils down to M dashes, and
Yeah.
damn it, I've been using them for years.
I
But
was going to say I love the M dash, so it really kind of throws a
right,
wrench in my work.
you know, and there are a handful of actual fairly concrete things, that not only but also kind of structure that the bots do overuse. But I'm seeing people going, "Oh, I'm not going to read that because it's obviously bot generated." And then somebody else pops up and goes, "Hi, I wrote that. That's my site. I don't use
Hmm.
any bots. That was all just me." One guy recently I was reading said, "Look, I've got the Git history with the 19 commits because it's not a very long site, as I wrote it. Would you like me to show you the process by which I wrote every word?" And of
Yeah.
course, the guy challenged goes, "Well, I don't know. I'm not sure I believe you." And he's like, "Okay, so you've gone from certainty to doubt. I guess I'll take that." But
Hmm.
I watched with interest the relaunch of the Dig social network over the last
Hmm.
year or so. And Dig was very much like Reddit about 15 years ago, coming up to 20 years ago. It was a site with lots of special interest groups where you posted interesting stuff, but was driven by threaded conversation
Yeah, I
more
remember
than
Dig. It was great. When it
yeah,
went under, I just moved to Reddit kinda
yeah.
thing, yeah.
And the guy, I think it's Kevin Rose that owned it, got it back, and relaunched
Mhm.
it very much in the old model, but without the ability to create your own groups and stuff. So he was trying to keep it a bit smaller. And I joined because I had a Dig account in the day and thought, this is strangely bland and anodyne. It's full of people being nice to each other and saying nice things, and it seems to be largely content free. Well, it shut down again earlier this
Mm,
year, and he said we got infiltrated by bots. We got
mm,
loads and loads of people posting bot generated content until a lot of the discussions were bots talking to other bots.
yeah.
And it's like that
Dead
would
internet.
kind of explain what I saw. But I'm still on Twitter, call it Twitter. I'm still on Twitter, and I have a block list which is like 6 pages long now of words and phrases, and it makes it kind of tolerable. But it is very odd to watch the interchange, and they've changed it recently so that you can block accounts, block and mute accounts which are serving ads. And yeah, if those are paying advertisers, they ignore your
Wow.
blocks. You get them anyway.
Yeah, of course. I have the same thing on Reddit, right? I've blocked
Right?
multiple
Yeah.
advertisers, and I go in to see, well, why am I seeing this? I wanna block this account again. It's like, "Oh, no, you already got this account blocked."
Yeah,
And
yeah.
it's like, "Well, then why am I seeing your ad?"
And yet, it's still actually quite lively and there's a lot of
Mhm.
discussion and there are still interesting people and some of the interesting people I followed years ago are still there, still posting and the discussions are still good. Some people are choosing this experience and it's not just because they're paying for it. Some people will choose this experience for reasons that
Well,
escape me.
yeah, people
Yeah.
build up. It's the follower structure. You build up an
Mhm.
audience, and
Mhm.
costly to rebuild that. So a lot of people have stuck with X, and now with there are now political reasons to stay with X,
Yeah.
and a lot of people have done that. And even journalists. I mean, I would have loved to have given up my X account, but it's useful because there are still people who post interesting things,
Yeah.
and
Yeah. Yeah, I don't really post on there anymore, but I still have my account,
yeah,
right?
Mhm.
it's worth it for sort of source finding. Yeah, people are not. I think that they flee the AI influence when they see it.
Mhm.
If they don't leave the site, they figure out a way to filter it. So I think it's going to be a very difficult few years as some kind of new equilibrium emerges because the old sort of systems where people and bots mix is just not satisfying to people.
And
And go ahead.
as X declines, I'm watching Mastodon, the Fediverse grow and get more interesting and get more feedback and interesting discussions. I still find Lemmy kind of a pain to deal with. I don't really like the presentation, which is like the activity pub driven version of Reddit, kind of.
Mhm.
Yeah. But I'm getting lots of interesting comments and feedback, and I don't like this word, but engagement. People are engaging on Mastodon
Yeah.
in a way they used to on Twitter and some of the other sites.
Yeah, and you're fleeing before AI, and hopefully it won't come to those
Yeah,
platforms
yeah.
either. But back to some of the things that Google's been doing, and I guess we can speak more to the alienation aspect here. Was another story that I covered this week out of I/O was that Google. A lot of people probably are familiar with the Gemini command line interface. Allows you to at least use Gemini to look at code and do some various programming tasks, and that's an open source tool that Google's had for I think about a year now. But in classic Google fashion, they're depreciating it in favor of the new one that they announced at I/O this week, anti-gravity CLI, which has some I think feature improvements over Gemini CLI. Right, Gemini CLI is Gemini. Anti-gravity is I think a little more model agnostic,
Mm.
but it's closed source, and that means that basically anyone who was using Gemini CLI is going to not be able to use it come June 18th. It's just going to stop working. It's not going to end. Google's not ending their maintenance of Gemini CLI. They're just restricting it to high tier enterprise customers. So it's still there. It's still an open source product. You've just got to pay to use it now. I found it interesting that a lot of developers, when I was reading some threads about this, were saying that they were particularly upset about the fact that they felt like they had spent their time and their effort to help improve Gemini CLI through, bug reports and, things on GitHub, right? And now all that work is essentially being closed sourced in a new product and sold back to them. I wonder again, right? Is this Google kind of leaning into another AI product that's just gonna piss
Right.
more people off.
Right. Well, I mean, the first lesson is never bet on a Google product because
You're right.
they kill them off mercilessly. It's also the amount of damage that the AI has done to the open source community is just, we're going to be dealing with it for years. I mean,
Yeah.
it's essentially there. I mean, I've had a couple projects where I think like, do I even want to make this public because I'm just going to get, if anyone uses it, I'll just get AI bug reports.
Mhm.
And
Hmm.
in a sense, all of open source has been captured in these models anyway, and you can
Mm.
just ask the model to regenerate all this, unlawfully captured labor that is, latent in these
Yep.
things.
Yeah.
And, that we haven't figured out a way to deal with that. I mean, I hope that some of the software lawsuits make progress because it's really transparent that people's labor has been captured in
Yes.
ways licenses did not, condone or anticipate. People are just reselling that labor and increasingly high prices.
Yeah. Liam, you cover open source stuff a lot. What has the developer community been saying about AI and its
Well,
influence
you
on
know
open
what?
source?
Again, I think obviously this has to be a sort of super generalization, but it seems to me that it's splitting and factionating, and on one side there's a group of people who embrace the tools, say that it's delivering unprecedented levels of productivity and so on. And on the other side, on the other faction, there's a group of people saying, no, we will not allow this anywhere near any product that we use, run, develop. There are a handful of people who are kind of still in the middle, like looking from side to side. And um, I recently wrote about the new version of OpenBSD, and it's faced such a problem, which is that OpenBSD incorporates tmux, a text mode terminal multiplexer, so you can have
Mhm.
windows in your terminal and different stuff going on. And tmux has started allowing Claude assisted code contributions, and that means they get grandfathered into OpenBSD. But the OpenBSD project has said we won't allow AI generated code because we can't copyright it. We can't put a firm license on it because we can't say where it came from.
Mhm.
So, on the one hand, we can't allow you to contribute authored code. On the other hand, here's an externally maintained project which is using AI authored code. So they're kind of stuck in the middle. But
Yeah.
um, I the most interesting study I've seen on this, where somebody tried to put numbers on it, was from an organization called MITRE, MITR, and they published the results of a study they did. They did a proper controlled trial with a whole bunch of developers given various programming tasks, and one half of the subjects were allowed to use AI tools and the other one not. And at the end of it, they asked the developers, how was it for you? Was it helpful? And all the people using bots went, oh, it's great. We estimate it's taken about 20% of the time off the process of developing this feature and getting it working.
Mhm.
And then they compared it with the other developers who weren't using any kind of code generation. And in fact, the people not using the tools were 20% quicker. In other words, it feels like you're going faster, but actually you're going slower. But you
Yeah.
sit there and watch the code unfold on your screen. I mean, I don't know. I've never used any of these tools. I'm an AI vegan. I avoid the whole thing. But
Mm.
you sit there and watch the bot write code and go, well, that was quick. All I got to do is make sure it works. And
Uh-huh.
4 hours later, it works. But you could have written it in 3 hours. And the odd thing is, I saw this report and I linked it and shared it and cited it. And then I bothered to go and look at who MITRE is. And MITRE is a pro AI advocacy group. They are AI boosters,
Mm.
but they decided let's get some proof of how much quicker it makes you. Well, we said we're going to do it, so we're going to publish. Respect to them for that.
Mhm.
I do wonder if all of the AI assisted projects, the ones that are really leaning in, are going to come up with a nasty surprise.
Mm.
Either this didn't really help and we got a load of stuff we can't debug, or actually this is taking longer, or price of this tool I'm using just went up. It just gained a zero and it's going to go up again. And damn it, I can't afford to use this anymore.
Yeah. Well, there
Yeah.
was just a report recently that Microsoft canceled its internal
Hmm.
cloud licenses because of the price hikes. I mean,
Hmm.
Hmm.
the price is going to go up, and
And up
the
and up.
problems aren't necessarily going to be evident right away.
Yeah.
Yeah. I've
Mm.
also heard that I've heard multiple instances of companies basically saying, well, these AI products are doing fine, but at the end of the day, they're more expensive than a new developer fresh out of
Yeah.
college.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So why would we use them? So it's interesting. So before we wrap up, I want to touch really quick on something that you wrote too, Liam. It was a couple weeks ago, but I think
Mhm.
it still plays into this whole idea of Google's AIification thing. And that's that Chrome was quietly installing large language models on users'
Yeah.
machines without express consent. So I understand you can flag that and turn it off. It's an opt out thing, but is that still happening? Did Google change tack on that after this was kind of reported on at all? Or
As far as I know, no. I have not checked because I didn't have it anyway.
Mhm.
Every time any app offers me any kind of AI integration, I just turn it off as soon as I can. And I'm not even sure what boxes I ticked in Chrome and when. But when I found out about this, I went looking and no, not on my I have my Google Chrome profile synced onto Windows and Linux and Macs, and it wasn't there on any of them. But on the one hand, I'm noticing in the open source world, some projects are belatedly embracing this, but they're talking very much about local first, open source models. Let's keep it on your machine, private. There's no risk of any leaks. And actually, that is kind of what Gemini Nano was supposed to do. It's a
Mhm.
tiny model, 4 gigabytes, a tiny model that wouldn't fit into memory on an x86 32 box, but hey, a nano model that ran on your machine, so there was no risk that anything could leak. Well, that is actually a good thing, I guess. But
Sure, yeah.
Mm.
it did it on phones as well. And now, okay, I'm cheap. I use very low end, mostly Chinese phones. But you know what? I live on a little island in the middle of the Irish Sea. I fly a lot more than I used to these days. And a couple of months ago, I was about to make a trip, and I thought I'll put some music on my phone. The only time I use my fancy noise cancelling headphones is on planes. Oh, my phone's full, and this current one doesn't have a card. I have to sync over a cable. So that's weird. I haven't got that much music on it. I discovered about a dozen 20 feature films on my phone. I have no recollection of ever downloading. I've never seen these films. I guess some search term somewhere synced something. I
Well,
deleted them and I had,
better an MP4 than an AI model, I suppose, right?
yeah, but at least, I mean, it was something I could sit and watch on the plane. I deleted them all, fitted a bunch more albums on there, and all was good. But yeah, even with my cheap ass $300 phone, okay, 4 gig here or there is kind of nothing. But even so, I'd rather that space was for my stuff. If you're
Right, it's
gonna
just
take
it's
that much,
yeah.
ask.
Yeah, local LLMs are a good idea, but ask me first.
I and it also raises the issue of what's the difference between that and a crypto miner if someone else is using if
Mhm.
an external server is using it. I mean, I'm fine with providing storage for something that's going to benefit me, but when some entity that I have a relationship with or don't is running stuff locally using my storage capacity and my processor for their benefit, I don't know about that. Like,
Yeah,
tell me
exactly.
the details.
It's like one of those
Yeah.
proof of stake cryptocurrencies rather than a proof of work one.
Mhm.
I mean, okay, I said earlier I don't use any AI tooling. There's one exception for that, which is I do use language translation tools. And I use them quite a lot, and I've got a choice of them. I spent 9 years living in the Czech Republic, a country with a brutally hard language I still can't read worth a damn. So, if they said like the deal with Firefox, we're gonna put a model in your browser but it'll translate stuff on your device and it won't go to the cloud. Well, okay, that could actually be useful. It's not quite at the point where I could use my phone to translate a menu while I'm offline on a plane or something, but you can see that is not far off. But
Sure.
you know what? I want to know why. I want to know what you're extracting from me and what I get in return, and make my own choice. And increasingly, that is a choice we're just not getting. I personally do not think that open source products like Ubuntu, like Fedora, including even optionally open source models which are privacy first and local and not for me, no, that's not good enough. Don't want that. And I'm not really interested in any product that includes that. And I appreciate they're trying to do the right thing, but I think they are going to be shocked by the level of hostility. Fedora is already backing down from its moves to attempt to become the best Linux for AI development because, to their great surprise, there was a user outcry. I think Ubuntu cares rather less about what its community thinks. They just try and do what they think is best. But I think they're going to be surprised by the pushback,
Yeah,
as
Google,
probably Google was.
obviously, yeah, Google, obviously, they might be surprised by the pushback, but the question is, will they care? No, it
Yeah.
seems like it seems like by and large, Google's, I think it was 2018 when they formally abandoned the "Don't be evil" slogan,
Hmm.
I think, right?
Hmm.
And it just feels like with these announcements lately that they're really just, making sure that it's fully whited out and erased from memory here. I mean, I don't know, putting an AI wall between people and the open internet, secretly uploading, LLMs to people's machines, forcing people onto closed source products. I mean, any thoughts on what's going to happen here? Any thoughts, guys, before we wrap this up? Like, is Google going to face blowback? Are they too big to fail?
Yeah, I mean, not for nothing. Is there all this excitement about someone finally being able to sort of take some of Google's business? I mean, the whole internet AI thing took off when everyone saw a weakness in search and said, "Hey, we can provide something that will break Google's stranglehold." I mean,
Hmm.
frankly, this is a story about the years of failed antitrust work that should have been dealt with many years ago and wasn't. And so Google basically just controls a large sector of the internet along with Meta now for advertising.
Hmm.
And that's starting to break up a little bit. But, it remains to be seen whether AI is going to be an advertising medium that's equivalently lucrative to, search. But who knows? They're going to give it a shot, but,
Hmm.
users are going to get sacrificed in the process.
Yep.
It's like an eternal verity of life in the technology market that, if it's true, there's probably an XKCD about it. And there was an XKCD years ago, 1118. Remember when we prosecuted Microsoft for bundling a browser with an OS? Imagine the future we'd live in if we'd been willing to let one tech company amass that much power. Thank God we nipped that in the bud.
Yeah.
Nobody is too big to fail. And the
Yeah.
bigger they come, the harder they fall. And I think some mighty industries worth hundreds of billions are going to come to grief over this stuff. And I've got a lot of sympathy.
Yeah, I guess we'll see. We'll see if will be enough to, clean some of that enshittification off the walls of the internet in the coming years. But hey,
What a beautiful
no
phrase. Well
matter
said.
yeah. No matter if it happens or not, we'll probably still be here and we'll probably still be talking about it on the Kettle. So be sure to tune in. Thanks for joining us.